Hello and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, a podcast focused on men's health and emotional awareness. Jason, a licensed therapist with over 18 years of experience, and I being profoundly affected by the death of my son, share grounded conversations and practical insights to help men navigate modern life with clarity and intention. Please like, follow, and share wherever you are listening or watching this. Doing so helps us reach more men who could be positively impacted by this material. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, Instagram, and TikTok under Guys Dealings with Feelings. What's going on, Jay?
Howdy.
Um,
Morning.
we're going to try and tackle this. Is here's a hook for everybody. If you want to get more attention from females, whether it is in your relationship that you're currently in or if you're seeking other females, this episode is about communication. Communication with females helps them interact with you more, which increases your chances of getting to whatever you would like to get to with them. So this episode is for all of us about communication. Again, we're going high level on all these things right now. We'll dig in deeper. This is a topic we could probably do a whole series on, but most of us as men aren't really bad communicators as much as we just haven't been trained how to communicate. We're expected to lead and provide and solve and protect, but no one really teaches us how to articulate what's happening inside of us. So what happens? We shut down, we get short, we get irritated, we say I'm fine, or we explode. Most of the time, it's not that we don't want to talk, it's that we literally don't have the words to get across what we're trying to say. So today we're going to talk about how to communicate when we don't understand what we're feeling, and then how to bridge the gap without damaging relationships. And again, this is a key thing just for humans in general. I think as men, when we think about communication, we automatically think about women. I think it's probably because they're better at it than us. And I think that lends to kind of what we're doing on this show. I think the lack of the ability for men to communicate lends to the hole in our society of people talking about these issues and discussing emotions and what's really guiding our journey here on earth and in life. And so Jason are really trying to do this. And I think that it's this practice, the things that we're going to be going through today are things that I know I've definitely had to practice because I've sucked at communication my whole life and I still suck at it. I know that I've gotten better at it, and I continue to try to get better at it. And we're gonna touch on some core things. We're gonna start out with our kind of how we have a vocabulary deficit on the whole thing. If we can't name what we're going through, we're gonna act it out. And when we have things like I'm angry, I'm pissed off, or I'm just tired, I'm stressed out, or I'm fine, I'm good. It's all good here. Really, what's under that is somebody who's unheard or they're feeling inadequate, they feel disrespected, they're overwhelmed, or Jason's told us before, core of a lot of this is fear, and so scared. And you know, I know I nobody talked to me about any of this. Uh, we're supposed to be those things. I think we're supposed to just be fine. I'm good. Don't worry about me. Or if we don't want to talk about it, we just avoid it and tired. And we'll get into kind of the physical response. What's been your journey in communication? I don't know. I think you're good. Your communication with me is outstanding. So I know you're good at it when it comes to you and I, but I also know you're a human being. And so I'm sure there's still hurdles that you deal with, but you seem to be an
Mhm.
extraordinarily good communicator.
Uh, yeah, you know how I would describe it? Good at expressing myself. What's expressing my interiority. So when we get into the subject, one of the first things I do is I start sort of pointing to what is it that we're communicating, right? Um, and that inevitably will lead to non-verbal communication, right? So I mean, think about that. We don't often think about that, at least as far as I can tell, right? Like, what are our eyes communicating? What's our tone of voice communicating? What's our body language, facial expressions, right? And that level of communication is happening generally on an unconscious level, right? And so, to me, what's most important is the process of learning how to identify the environment at which communication is coming out of. Does that make sense? What is
It
the
does.
environment that the words or the actions are coming out of? Is it an agitated environment, right?
Right. Right. Eh,
And and then what does that mean? And where is that agitation, right? And what's it coming from?
which I think really, I th- just that little bit that you just said shows us how many layers we're dealing with when we're trying to communicate. You know,
God.
in where did we start? Or were we inflamed? Were we excited? Were we, pissed? Had we just gotten hurt? Like what? So what environment was it coming from in your body? Then the next layer is, can I identify, which we're going to get to a little bit later, but can I even identify what it is that I'm feeling and trying to communicate? Because that's, the majority of our communication is to try to express what it is we got going on to
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so, do I even know what it is I'm trying to express? Layer two. And then layer three, the face, the physical,
Yeah, the nonverbal.
yeah, and then your
Which is
verbal.
actually the majority of our communication. Language often fails us, all the time. And in my experience, language can just be insufficient to
And,
communicate what I'm experiencing.
and I think we all experience that in the widespread use of text messaging,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
where you can say a group of words to form a sentence
And it's
that can be
interpreted.
read, it's
Yeah,
interpreted
yeah,
very
yeah,
differently
yeah,
than
yeah,
what it
yeah,
is
yeah,
that you
yeah,
intended to say.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that
yeah, yeah.
we hopefully everybody kind of gets a laugh and a cringe when they hear that, because we've all sent something and
Yeah,
some hand would be like, look what I said. And they're like, why would you say that to somebody? What?
yeah,
And realize that you said something stupid or you
yeah,
said something that was taken away wrong. So language can definitely fall short. Our tone is very important to your point,
yeah,
our
yeah, yeah, yeah,
expressions.
yeah. When I'm so this falls under the category of emotional intelligence, right? Like how capable am I of bringing the intelligence of emotions into life, right? And for all of us, what we're generally it's a general cultural and not like human lack of awareness, right? That emotional intelligence is all about the body, all about the state of the nervous system on a regular basis, and it's all about how connected, right? How coherent is the connection between our left hemisphere and right hemisphere of the brain? Because the right hemisphere of the brain you could describe as emotional, or sometimes it will be referred to as feminine. And that's fine. It's just a characteristic. It's just a word to describe, try to attempt to
Right. I
describe
know.
something, So, the flow of energy, motion, right? And how that being able to identify and express what we feel is generally natural for a body that is in a balanced state, for a body that has hemispheres that are communicating coherently, right? But the way that all our experiences have affected us to some degree or another is a body, neurophysiology that is just very disconnected, and which leads to not knowing what it is that we're experiencing at the level of feeling. We just don't even know. We most of the time we have no clue that fear's active, or we're just generally not familiar.
Yeah, and I think jumping into the next section, that the how quickly physiologically our nervous system gets involved, and to your point, and what is we all know fight, flight, and freeze. We all know it. We've all heard it. We all probably say it. But in this instance, what we're talking about, fight, you're angry. You're 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 expressing anger. You boils up in you. The flight, you avoid the topic. You avoid doing it. You avoid going around it. You avoid discussing it. You just don't bring it up. In freeze, you shut down. And I think we all know this one. So it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I know you can't think when you're in that, but putting these pieces together, you're communicating that you're in that place with this way, and it's a physiological thing, to Jason's point. So you've got to get that right. It's all going to come. It's
It's a
it
chemical
comes to
experience.
the whole thing. The entire experience of life is a chemical experience, and if we can,
At a level, yeah, at a level, right?
yeah, well, I mean, it's all, yeah, that's what's
Well,
driving the boat.
yeah, right. So, um, here's I think for many of our experience, right, we've been conditioned into sort of an idea that we're inbrained, that we're walking around, brains, just bodies wrapped around brains. I don't know. But in reality, we're embodied, right? And so for many of us, we are radically unaware of how what happens in what we call the mind, right? How that is specifically related to nervous system states. And you can refer to it in your own experience, right? Like if you're agitated, if there's an agitation in your field, right? And that's being experienced, you can you can pretty much guarantee that like the thinking will be less generous. There'll be more judgment, more projection, more assumption. Does that make sense? It resonate what I'm right? Uh and that's just what happens to the thinking patterns in that agitated state, right? But for many of us, we're not we're not familiar with how that works. We're not familiar with our own states. So we consistently attribute what we're experiencing to something outside of us, right? Um, and that's one of the primary things that I see happening in between people, for all of us, uh, in our relationships. We're trying to communicate what's happening inside, but we are are really often ascribing what we're feeling to the other person, right? And so we use language that might sound like this. Uh, you're making me feel like I'm not being heard, right?
You always.
Yeah, but even that statement, you're making me feel like I'm not heard, right? So
Mhm.
if you actually think about it, the person is describing an interpretation. There's no such thing as a feeling called like not being heard. That's not a feeling. That's an interpretation of the external environment and somebody's facial expressions or lack of presence or right. And so actually what you're experiencing is agitation. Like and maybe if you're just communicating it authentically, you might say something like, "Hey yo, what's up? Will you check in please while and you might not take it personal. You might assertively express yourself, right? But then to say, "I feel like you're not listening to me," you're you're reflecting something, but again, you're describing an interpretation. You're not describing your interiority fully, right? So we're working to communicate our interiority authentically, but we have been conditioned out of knowing about the body, nervous system states, what it means to be in a sympathetically activated state regularly, how that affects our thinking patterns and perceptual experience. Um, we're just not super intimate with that.
So since we're all learning, there are some things we can prescribe to. I think it's a way. In me, it's a way to learn, as in real time, how this is happening, because I have to implement thing that I've learned. And so here's where we can help teach some folks about
Hopefully,
that. So
embody it, right?
yeah, and right. And it's like stopping and picking. In the last episode, we are talking about stopping and picking up the trash. It's a little practice that's going to build to the big thing. So in communication, it was a very big. You always, or when you, I feel. Can you help direct us into an appropriate communication where we are accepting that this is us and this is how we feel? We're not trying to bring you into it.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you
yeah,
give us a
yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
generic way to do that?
Yeah, I think um one of the one of the most popular dialogues about this, about how to communicate, at least in my experience, I think it's unbelievably deep. Um, it will be referred to as nonviolent communication. Okay. Um, yeah, I think you could also describe it as compassionate communication, but let me give the principles of it, right? And the nonviolent communication was, I guess, like formalized in a way by a guy named Marshall Lenahan, right? In the like maybe 60s, 70s, right? Again, beyond deep. And he spent lots of time at very conflictual places. You think like Palestine and like very divided, conflictual human zones, right? Uh, with great success. So here is his four principles of nonviolent communication, right? And one starts with observation. So listen to this. Clearly describe what is happening for you in a neutral, factual way without mixing in evaluation or judgments. That is insanely hard for us to not add on interpretation, like you're doing this because of, right? So that's one, just being able to describe what you're observing. And maybe like, okay, you seem angry or right. Uh then the next is so observation, then feelings, stick with feelings. Identify and express your emotions honestly, taking responsibility for them. I feel frustrated instead of I feel like you're not listening to me. It would sound like I just feel a little frustrated right now, right? Um, needs, then, so observation, feelings, needs, such as the need for connection, which is just universally human. So I feel frustrated. I have a really deep need to connect and communicate something. And then request, make a clear, positive, actionable request for what it is you would like to happen. Hey, I'm feeling a little frustrated. I really want to connect with you, talk with you, uh, and look eye to eye. Can we put our phones down for a minute and just make that happen? Right. Um, so observe, identify what is being experienced. Again, my interiority, right? Express that in relation to universal human needs like connection and safety, respect, right? And then make request as to what you might want to happen, right? So there's just a lot of responsibility in that kind of communication, and it takes a lot of awareness around our interiority, which is what all of us are working to be more familiar with.
Yeah,
What
and
is actually happening right here?
yeah, and I think that if we could all do that, a that
Yeah.
we would um, we would be able to mingle with whomever.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
We'll say
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But anyhow, I think a way that so I'm probably I would need to go through that every time I went to go through a statement to make sure I was checking all the boxes. Kind of the way I've done it as the the goofy guide to being to stumbling through this thing. Uh, I try to focus. This is attempt. I try to focus everything on me. To your point, without saying it's because you're doing something. In this in another way to buy yourself some time so you don't just say fuck it and shut down is to
Mm.
say you need a minute. I need to figure out why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. Is it
Which means I have to be able to pause, right? I have to be able to pause when some agitation arises, in me, right? So there are a ton of ways that we can all increase our awareness around our interiority, right? There's many suggestions, many things to do, but one of the most effective things we can do is just begin to turn our radar in that direction. right? Like, accept the fact that we were all taught really distorted things about how to identify our interiority and express it. Like, we just weren't taught, right? And so, we can do things like set an alarm for 5 minutes, for a couple times in a day, and then tune our radar into what we're feeling. Okay, what am I feeling right now? It's really turning our radar in that direction. Now, ultimately, for all of us, being able to increase our ability to stop, to just pause when something's coming up to be expressed, to really get a good look at it, right? That's related to the nervous system and a healthy functioning central nervous system and automatic nervous system. So that is a matter of us actually providing the body with physical therapy. So meaning the more I sit down and let my system relax and take my attention off of all my thinking and just put it on the body and relax and let things uh, calm down, right? One of the things that's automatically happening is it is working to trigger and facilitate more of a connection between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of the brain. It just happens naturally. But we have to actually sit down and relax our attention, relax our system on a regular basis. And then what will happen naturally is we'll just develop more of a capacity to pause when something really intense comes up. Because typically, what happens when something intense comes up in our experience, our attention moves outwardly to the external environment. It's just a survival. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
So,
you're going to do fight, flight, or freeze.
right,
You're going to get
exactly.
angry. You're going to,
Right. But for most of us, we lack the ability to pull that attention back into the body, to bring it back in and to focus on our breathing and relaxing our shoulders and our tummy and our heart, like just really trying to pull that attention back in to where that is actually happening. Our attention gets so sucked into the environment. That's where we imagine the problem and the danger. But it's really the body freaking out. And we just don't know how to pull our attention back to the body and away from all the noise that's going on in the mind around story and Um,
that's right. Uh, yeah, what we're attaching to what's happening,
yeah.
and that's where the blow ups and arguments are going to occur. Is we attach our narrative, our
Which comes from the
perspective,
past.
our narrative and our perspective, with our beliefs and all the other stuff we talk about gets attached to the statement the individual makes, and we get emotionally inflamed, jump into amygdala, not even thinking straight now. And one of my big things that I do is exactly what Jason said. I just stop when emotions shoot up. I don't want to make a bad decision, and I have made enough of them that I am trying to prevent making
Don't
them.
want to hurt anybody, right? Like,
Yeah, you don't want to hurt even yourself. You don't want to hurt others. You don't want to hurt yourself. You just don't want to do
mhm.
things that are stupid. I think one that we can all relate to as men is road rage. So somebody cuts you off and then you drive in an erratic behavior based on the anger that you're experiencing. And I'm guilty as charged on that. And so, we just have to, it goes to communication. And I think as much as this episode is about communication, that when you question whether, why am I doing this, or why would I spend time meditating, or why would I spend time slowing down to figure something out, and why that person probably finds themselves in the same conversation with themselves of, why am I having such a hard time getting along with people, why am I not communicating well with my partner, why am I having trouble with my boss, like, or with my employees. It's the same fucking conversation to those that are hearing this. That is the same conversation. So you just answered why, because you're having those problems on the other
You're the
side.
common
And
denominator.
you're the one, yeah, you're the one that keeps showing up when this is happening, and that's our lives. And it's so, because again, in my scenario, it's a little different. If you haven't lost a child or even, been through a devastating addiction or, lost a death is not there and it's not as obvious for you. That's who I'm talking to. I knew I had fucking problems. Jason knew he had fucking problems. We had to get the ship situated. And all this comes together in this recovery of self is what I talk about when I say recovery. And you learn that you don't to deal with the agitation, you stop and see, why am I agitated? Or it's just going to keep coming. And so we learn we got to deal with the agitation. So when you're questioning why is it that I would do these things and pay attention to it, it's so that you have a better experience. Again, I think it's a little selfish, and that's great. That's what you want. Your journey is going to be better off. You're going to have a better handle on things, and you can accurately let others, usually it's people you give a shit about that you're communicating with, you let others know what you're experiencing and going through versus you tell them A when you didn't mean B. Go back to our text example. When we communicate out of um, blind emotion, for lack of a better word, it's like sending text. It's just I'm just going to throw some words out there and hopefully they land like I
Yeah.
wanted them to.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
not fucking gonna. And we know that. And that's how we end up in these blow up arguments. And we go, we're in the argument with our partner and we go sit down and, we're going to hold our ground because now it's about, who's going to win and who's going to lose. But in our head, it's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck are we even arguing? I was just saying I didn't want,
Yeah.
well, you
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
fucking say it.
Yeah.
It's what happened.
It,
Uh,
it it goes back to something yeah, amen to all that, right? It really comes down to conditioning and identity, right? So we don't relate to ourselves as multidimensional thinking, feeling beings automatically, right? I can't tell you how many times I've heard, "Oh, I don't feel that much. I'm just not that emotional." Like it's an identity. Like it's a personality characteristic, right? It isn't. It's conditioning. So as we're growing, for one, our neurophysiology is challenged, and it is not developing like an internal sense of coherence and connection because of how difficult the environment is that we're growing in, right? And so that's being affected. And then there are cultural restraints that are being and cultural concepts that are being communicated and conditioned into the growing child, right? So whether you're in a female body or a male body, you're going to be given distorted ideas of how to express yourself, how to express emotion, what's okay to express, how intense it's okay to express, right? And so we're getting taught how to relate to natural energies, natural things that come up in us, right? Which just is just information, you know. Um, and so then um, we all really develop these distorted, conditioned relationships to feelings, right? Which is really this really chronic suppression and repression, right? For men, that is just a significant part of our developmental process. We're unconsciously and sort of directly programmed into the idea that anger and power, like force, are okay to express, but softness and tenderness isn't. It's not safe to express that. I think many of us by now see through that, but obviously it hasn't sunk into all of our bones yet, you know, that real strength is an open hearted tenderness that's grounded and stable, you know, um, that's where our power is in our hearts. We're not told that, man.
no. And I know that there's people who influencers or whatever we call them, these people who have a lot of people that follow them, and a big response, you know, well, I share my feelings and then it gets used against me or thrown back in my face. Well, you're probably dealing with another individual who's not healthy, is
No,
what my,
100%. We're all
yeah,
working to be able to know what we're experiencing, be generous with our partners, be generous with other people, be generous with ourselves. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
It's a,
it's
it's a
everybody.
two-way street. And, you throw something, you try, if you're growing and your partner is not or wants to use that as a weapon or tool against you, that's probably a pretty clear sign that it's not the correct partner. And if you can express that to them, like, hey, this is not something that I'm just not going to be subjected to, and you set your boundary on that. Again, we got episodes on identity, we got episodes on boundary, we got episodes on beliefs, and all of that is going to lend itself to what Jason was just talking about. and uh, and then under the entire blanket of men have been conditioned to not go into these waters, to not navigate these waters. And it is not, it's lent itself to what the conditioning was for, which is to get you to shut the fuck up and go to work. And it has not lent itself to a happy journey.
Yeah, and it's lent
And
itself to a very destructive form of masculinity all over the
yeah,
planet that is
it,
not connected to its heart.
destructive to itself and others.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
anyway, that I digress, but I think that, I hear it's bad enough that we've been conditioned to do it, but then there's others who take advantage of it because the natural response to somebody saying that, don't share your feelings, you need to bottle that shit up, just be more of a man. They just trying to tap into what's the conditioning that's already there. Of course,
Yeah,
you're going to relate to
sure.
it. That's the fucking conditioning.
Right.
So it's just another tool to
Well, the
again, these
the
people are being
marketplace
paid.
of
So
yeah, the marketplace of human potential is full of distorted information. And I don't know, man, false promises and stuff. Yeah.
well, and April and I were talking about this morning. If you've been taught something, and especially in the U.S. from the very beginning, from your parents to your teachers to your religious leaders, all of that, any of that stuff, there was something other than what they were talking about that was in mind when they were teaching it to you. So there was a pathway that they wanted you on as they taught you. So if you're really wanting to learn and to know, you must seek it out. You've got to go find it. You've got to learn it. You've got to do the work. And we're trying to bring some of that together for you. And we're not, this is not some conspiracy. We're not being, "Oh, what about this?" And this is just how it works. And it's been done this way on purpose. Um, and we just want everybody to, well, men specifically, to have a shot at a happy journey and a good existence and be in tune with themselves and those around them. Their children will be affected, and it can help train this into another generation that this needs to happen and that there is always an ulterior motive around us when it's organized. So we're going to give you a tool today. Go ahead. You got something?
I just was going to describe it as us becoming solid objects, stable. Um, Rocks that our partner's expression can crash into and we don't shy away from, right?
Or make
And
worse?
or yeah, and react to. And that requires a neurophysiology that is coherent. It requires movement into more depth of feeling. It's a requirement. Um, So and again for the way that we approach that, right, is through the neurophysiology. So it's through learning about the nervous system, learning about the vagus nerve, learning about nervous system states, beginning to engage in these practices that allow us to be more have more of a capacity to feel things and stay with it and be curious and investigate, right? Uh, and then eventually share, but share from a place of responsibility, right? Accountability. Um,
Versus judgment or authority or
or projection, you know.
projection. Yeah, yeah,
This is yours to do something with,
yeah.
right?
So, so what we've got to maybe help during this is kind of a 3-layer check in. We're going to be looking for what happened, so the facts, what did I feel, the emotion or word, and then what did I make it mean, and so how I interpreted. So, what happened? She questioned why I did something. What I felt was defensive and embarrassed, and what I made it mean. She thinks I'm dumb, and this is simple, but it creates clarity before the conversation begins. And I think if you can just stop, I know my stepdad, um, he used to always have a thing in his car, and he didn't think of this. It was told to him, and he thought enough that he wrote it down, and it sat right next to. It was on his dash, and it was just think before you speak, stop and think.
You
Don't
know what
just
I would
react.
say? You know what I would say? I would change it a little, and I would say, "Breathe before you speak. Breathe before you speak," right? Because
Because that's multi-layered.
that's
Sure.
more reflective of an embodied being, not an embrained being.
No,
I'm not
I'm
trying to
not. It's
I'm
not.
just sort of expanding that
It
idea a
that's
little,
well,
right?
sure. It's great
Yeah.
because it forces the stop and think,
Yeah.
and it brings in
Breathe.
the physiology so that
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
calm the body and let the
Yeah.
body know we're
Right.
still
'Cause
here.
you
Heart's beating,
used
lungs are breathing.
right. Think about these 2 words, defensiveness and embarrassment. All right. So then where is that happening? It's not just psychological, right? That is a body that closes, a nervous system that flares into a sympathetically activated state, right? So defensiveness is a bodily experience, right? It's not just
Mhm.
not in just the psyche, right? And embarrassment is that burning we feel in the body. We're all familiar with it,
Sure.
right?
I I think everybody should be familiar with all this stuff we're talking about, and obviously, I've got some bias, and then it's coming from us. So, but I mean, I can. The more I've learned about this, the more I can watch others and I don't ever say shit. It's not my place, but go, wow, that hurts. And then I reflect, oh, God damn, how much have I done of that in the past and how I'm just and that just gives me fuel to keep fucking plowing, man, because
Yeah,
there's so
you.
much more to do.
This is, the topic is just endlessly deep. So let me sort of. I just want to make an observation for a second, right? So in reality, we are communicating all the time, whether we realize it or not. There is an energetic expression that's happening. Our heart is producing a magnetic field that comes off of us, right? And so when we're more relaxed in ourself, in our bodies, it allows everybody else to be more relaxed in themselves and in their bodies as well, right? So we're communicating all the time. And really, what you and I are talking about is how to be intimate with the deeper layers of what that means, and then how to become skillful at what's being communicated, right? And being more aware at what is contributing to the communication. Like, what are our intentions, motives, right? Why is something being communicated? Again, out of what environment is something being communicated, right? So, uh, the more relaxed our environment can be, the more clear our communication can be.
And what greater form of leadership? Um, how many men want to stick their chest out and talk about being leaders? I'm just trying to make the connection of it ain't weakness, and it's being in tune and being able to express whatever, being able to identify and express whatever the emotion may be. It's not there's no judgment on it, and nobody should be putting the judgment on it. And if you want to command a room, communicating with your presence is a very high form of leadership. You walk in, everybody knows somebody who walks in takes command of a room before they say a word, and it's their they understand. They have an understanding, whatever that may be. It could just be that the subject of the room, or it could be their whole lives. We see successful people aren't just successful in their jobs. Some of them are, and they're miserable, but some of them are very happy and they have healthy bodies. They eat healthy food. They do healthy activities. They run a healthy business. They have a healthy bank account. And it's not that it wasn't all luck. It wasn't just they lucked into a bank account, all that other shit fell in place. Their bodies, they had to work on that. So it's a whole thing. It's a presence, it's a being.
Yeah, and I would say when we become into right relationship with ourself and our interiority and nervous system, body, then it allows us to be in a right relationship with everything else. That's the foundation. It's in here. That awareness, aware of our interiority, right? Uh, and having intimacy with that and agency over not over. Agency is a
It's
weird
being in
word. I
tune
like
with
to,
it, right?
yeah, I like to, yeah. It's to me, it's more really about an intimacy with what's happening, and then that just takes practice
Yeah, and
and
that's all.
attention.
That's Yep. We put all this stuff out there, and I think if just start chipping away, and again, none of it is rocket science, so it's understandable, and none of it is uh, individually impossible to implement.
Hmm.
Now, it takes an extraordinary amount of work and dedication and reflection and accountability and uh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to stay on it because it's a bitch going through it. But there's just a time will come when it's like you're only going to want to do that because it feels off to not do it. You don't feel as good. You can feel physical differences. Your presence is picked up by those that you care about because you've become this calming presence, and now you're irritated and agitated. Now you're putting that off, and they're like, what's wrong, and you didn't say anything, and it's just it, and then it dominoes down the other way, and you got to build back. So it's just a constant thing we're working at, and this is just another layer of a multi layered onion that is our lives. And look, we're just trying to do the best we can. uh, I think of the things that we talk about, communication is probably the one that affects us, but it's really just because it's the tool that we have to deliver the mess that's inside. Uh, and so that's what really is. But the problems all are deeper. They're more ingrained. They're coming from our body and the experiences and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you could imagine that all that movement underneath it has to do with what we would call needs, getting needs met, right?
And when we're focusing on this shit, we know we know what needs are there, and we can
Well,
feed them.
here's the reality though. Once you get maybe uh, I'm gonna be a little bit of a smart ass and say, I don't know, age 7, I'm being a smart ass. At a certain point, to be honest with you, I don't need anything from anybody at all. That's just that's just a lack of understanding. Uh, in reality, at a certain point, everything we need is right here.
So to wrap things up, most men don't struggle with communication because we're weak. We struggle because no one really gave us the tools. So you don't have to become someone else. You just have to slow down long enough. Yeah, he just came back. I was just jumping into the conclusion because I lost you for some time. It's all right. So most men don't struggle with communication because they're weak. We struggle because nobody's really given us the tools. We're not suggesting, nor do we need to become someone else. We just need to slow down long enough to understand what's happening inside of us. The moment we say, I don't have the words yet, but this matters, we're already communicating at a higher level than most people are doing so. So you're not behind, you're learning, and that's strength. And as always, we sure appreciate you giving us your time, your most valuable asset. Until next time, stay in the fight. The world is a much better place with you in it.